10 seconds.
All right. The meeting is now streaming live on Facebook.
There we are. Hey everyone, it's Sarithkin from Montier, and I'm here with Duke Hrothgar from the Outlands.
Hi.
There he is. He's been king of the Outlands 3 times. And you've watched a couple of these, so you know that we used to start with the origin story. So if you want to start us there, and I will do my little magic on the thing while you talk, that would be great.
Sure thing. I have kind of a funny one because when I was really pretty young, I was, I think, 7 years old or something, my sister got involved with the SCA because there was a fighter practice that was like 3 blocks away from our house. And so I kind of got exposed to it then, and I thought it was pretty neat. And then she kind of got into high school and stuff and lost interest in it a little bit. And when I was probably 10 or 11, I got pretty interested in it. I played D&D, I was into medieval stuff, and I talked to my mom about it, and she said, well, let's go see if we can find the SCA. And she brought me to Fighter Practice Park at Hyder Park, and I met a number of people there, and I met a knight who was named Sir Olaf Bear Crusher.
Good name.
His name was Oli Beer Crusher. And I became his page when I was like 11 years old, and I went to a bunch of different fighter practices, and they had like a little page school then with, you know, little stuff to teach you about heraldry and all of that. And I did that for probably a year and a half, and I went to, my mom was actually really cool and sent me up to a Grand Outlandish with him one year, and it was in 1982. And I brought one prop because I have this fantastic picture of little me and
oh wow,
yeah,
that is super cool.
and a couple of guys in the back, and you can't see the girls in the back. There are a couple of guys in the back from a household called the Crimson Company, and he was a Rolling Thunder knight. But they thought he was pretty cool, and there used to be a big tradition. The Crimson Company camped on this big hill at the site, and it was Crimson Hill, and so it was kind of scary to go up there. They were a bunch of kind of rough and tumble guys, and he got invited up there for a feast one night and brought me up there. And the Crimson Company is a household that's kind of loosely based out of some of the Gore novels. So they were, you know, pretty rough. They had slave girls in bunny fur bikinis, the whole deal. You know, and I'm a little 11-year-old, and I just think, wow, this is like the coolest thing ever, right? They had venison at the feast, and, you know, big fires, and I really, it made a big impression on me, and I thought that was pretty cool. And that's the only event that I went to at that point. And then I think kind of school happened, and I kind of got out of it and didn't stay in touch, and had a couple of years when just went to middle school. And then I met a buddy of mine named Jason in middle school. At the end of middle school, we hung out all summer. We played D&D together. We did all that stuff. And I told him about the SCA, and he was like, oh, that sounds really cool. And then he was going to move for the year to Alaska to live with his dad for the school year. And so we both were like, when you get back, we're gonna go find this thing. And so he did, and he came back, and it was, I think, 1986. And we hopped on our bikes, and we went to the fighter practice park, the same place that it used to be, and there was nobody there. And we were like, oh man, it's a bummer. And I was like, well, there's this other park that they sometimes do things at that's kind of between where we were and back at my house. So we rode by there, and sure enough, they were having this big tourney in Baton Park. And there were a whole bunch of guys there, and it was a big deal. And we watched the tournament, and we had a guy come up and talk to us, and you know, he was like, hey, you guys interested in this? And we were like, sure. And his name was Lord Christopheles the Clueless, and he was, and so when I was telling Jason about this entire thing, and I was telling him, oh, there's this cool thing, and you hit each other with sticks, and it's all medieval, and all this, and there's this household called the Crimson Company, and they're just so cool. And so Christopheles was, when we met him, he was part of the Crimson Company, and we were like, all right, we're there, we're gonna join, we're gonna do this, and he kind of took us under his wing, and I was 14 and Jason was 15 at the time, and we kind of got into it, and he taught us how to make armor, and we made little leather suits, and we met Master Johann Blau, who's a fantastic armorer, and he taught us how to, we went over to his place and dished our elbow cops and our knee cops, and we made most of our stuff. We bought helmets from him eventually. And Christopheles took us to events. Our parents were thankfully really supportive of that as well. I mean, when I think about it now, when I think about Clue, and I've got a 17-year-old son, and sending him off with somebody who kind of looked like that, I don't know.
It was a different time, definitely.
For sure. But I'm really grateful that my parents were supportive of it, and we went off to a couple of events, and just thought it was great, and have been there ever since. And my friend Jason is now Duke Rorik. He's still around. We're both still kicking, and that's kind of how we got started. We got into this rough and tumble household that was a little fringe, a little non-mainstream.
I was gonna say, was it fringy?
Yeah, it was definitely not mainstream. I mean, there were a couple of nights. There were 2 knights who were very active when we joined, and it was an interesting dynamic, because like I learned later, we were like a mercenary household. We'd go to Estrella and we'd fight, and we'd get hired by whoever, and we'd go fight with them, and the king would be pissed, and I was like, whatever. And then later on in my SCA, I kind of learned to understand a little bit more how the game works and fealty and such things, and I was like, oh, all right, yeah, I'd probably be pissed too. So so it was interesting, but we it was a lot of fun. It was a great bunch of guys, and we kind of had an off and on relationship with that household, where we kind of, right after we joined, Christopheles there were some politics, and he kind of split off, and we started our own household for a little while, and then we rejoined, and then we split off again and had a household with Duke Johann and Earl Cathan, and did that for a little while, and then ended up back with the Crimson Company guys for a while. And yeah, that was kind of my start in the SCA, and that my early years. And I went to Estrella 3, I think, was the first one, and I've missed one since then. So I've been to a lot of those. Yeah.
That's super cool. I think it's really cool that you and Rorik still play, and you started at the same time. And you're both Dukes. Mm-hmm. So you must have come up and trained together.
Yes.
That's super cool. Back when you were 15, was the fighting age still 14 with consent, or 16 or whatever?
I'm not entirely sure. I know that we got our parents to fill out waivers, and we may or may not have told folks that we were older than we were when we started the thing. But we were fighting then, and it was a different time then, for sure.
Did you fall in love with the fighting right away?
I was in love with the whole thing, and the fighting was part of it. I would say for the first 3 years or so, the fighting was certainly fun. It was really exciting. It was a big rush. It wasn't something that I had an aptitude for a little while, for sure. I think I was still growing, and so I'd go out there, and we we went to Australia War, and we were in the, our first Australia War, we're in the front line of this charge, and we go charging in, and Clue, the guy who brought us in, he fought with a 7.5-foot pole arm and a sword, and we're running behind him, and we're running up on this big bunch, this shield wall with this big bunch of spears, I remember, and he running up fast on it, and then he just kind of did like a baseball slide into third base, slid, turned his pole arm sideways, stood up, lifted up all the spears, and we just ran into the shields, and it was the coolest thing ever, So yeah, so I was into the fighting and excited by the fighting, but I wasn't very adept at it at that point. But yeah, that was a big draw. And then there's parties at night, and there's girls. Wow, that's good stuff. It's all the good stuff.
Oh, teenager's dream right there.
Exactly.
So did you start out with the name Hrothgar, or did that come later?
That came later. I started out with the name Rave. Here's my word of
Was
honor.
that your D&D name?
No, I don't know where that came from. You had to pick a name, and Jason had a funny name Jason had Jason for a while, and I had Rave, and then when started getting a little more serious about things and going to events in other places, and meeting other folks, and I think it was a couple of several years later than that we were at Penzic, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna change my name, and I found Hrothgar, and been that ever since. So, yeah.
Were you already interested in like Viking culture, or?
It's interesting because I kind of was when we started. I thought that was neat, and Clue was into Viking stuff, and so we kind of steered that way a little bit. But I was looking, like a couple months ago, I was going through some old papers that I had and showing them to my son. It was some old art that I had drawn, and so I'd always been into, there were things from when I was little of drawing dragons, and then I came upon this thing that I didn't even remember, that was a drawing of a Viking ship from probably when I was 7 or 8. So I guess there was something there that entire time, and then later on, like when I was in high school, I took Russian as a language, and thought that was interesting, and was a little bit of a Russophile, and so I kind of then leaned that direction with it. Yeah.
So many cool finds lately from out there,
Yes.
but we're going to talk about your journey, and not
right.
about cool
All
stuff. Right. But were you interested in the history component too, or did that come later?
I think it came later, like as far as the serious part of it. I thought that all of the history of it was really neat, but definitely there were many of my starting years in the SCA where I was like, didn't have much of a persona, and had a lot of different clothes from different eras, and oh, that looks really cool. I had somebody make me a cool Lance Connect puffed and slashed thing, thought that was great, and I had a doublet and this and that, and I used to be kind of more of a clothes horse, and nowadays I more kind of like dress to my persona, and that's kind of it. So.
Cool. So who taught you how to fight, and did you start with Sword and Shield?
I started with Sword and Shield. I have mostly fought Sword and Shield. I mean, I fight a lot of spear as well, war fighting, but yeah, Sword and Shield. Started out with Sword and Shield, and have kept with it the whole time. We started out with Christopheles teaching us, but Alberon at that time was our barony here was a really big kind of cultural mecca for fighting in the Outlands. And at the time, we had just become a kingdom, or we were just about to become a kingdom when we joined. And we had a bunch of kind of older school fighters, but we had a couple of guys who were, rising at that time, who were Duke Johann and Duke Arton, who had very different fighting styles, and they had learned and started fighting the high guard style very different, because all the old guys were just
Get back there.
swords back on their shoulders. And, so we were kind of there at a neat time to be able to get in on that and learn that. And then, like I said, the first several years were kind of a wash for fighting, and I went out and did it, and I practiced a lot, but I didn't, went to practice every week, but I wasn't winning. I wasn't kicking butt, and I wasn't probably even too driven for that at that point. And then we kind of had a neat thing at the end of my high school and beginning and through my college years. There was a bunch of young guys, Rourke and I, but then Earl Cameron now, Brody, Jax, who were all kind of a similar skill levels, and we all really, it was a really great group to be able to kind of push each other and grow. And that I really, I think having some really some really good fighters that we could look at and learn from, and then being able to fight amongst ourselves and develop our own stuff really went a long way there. And I think helped all of us really level up a lot. And then I was going to a school about an hour away at a college that had a college group, and there were a couple guys there who were pretty good, and there were a lot of guys there who were really just really kind of basic fighters that didn't know a lot. And that gave me a chance to take the stuff that I had learned and go practice it and do different stuff and mess around and not worry about it too much. And I think that gave me some good space to grow there too.
Not get punished for trying new stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you end up squaring someone?
I squared to somebody later. I squared later in my days. I think in all the time in the Crimson Company, in and out, and we kind of went, as I said, back and forth in that group for a number of years, and we had it was not really. There wasn't a lot, even though we had a couple of nights there, there wasn't a lot of squire relationships in that group. And I think it probably would have been looked at a little strangely if we had squired to somebody else. And I don't think we were interested. We were rebels at that point. We were cool. We were in this.
When did your perspective change and you decided that, maybe that was a path you wanted to take?
Yeah, I think that I think I quit the Crimson Company. We had a lot of, there was some politics and some disagreements. We had a tournament every year for the leader of the group, and it was called the First Blade Tournament. And it was this fantastic, no rules, no holes barred, fight to the yield sort of thing. The rule was if your helmet came off, you lost. And most of the fighting was kind of general SCA convention, except that we'd throw each other on the ground and roll around and grapple a lot. But most of the time you'd take your blows. But if there was a grudge or if you didn't want to, you just keep going and keep bashing at it. And we had, so at one point I won that tournament, and then Rourke won it, and then we traded it back and forth a couple times. But I think we're having some outside influence because we had started to travel. We had some folks move into the kingdom from out of town, from Calontir. Sir Roderick of Mandrake Hill was in kingdom for a while, and then Sir Richard Wolfwood came and lived out here for a number of years, and actually Rourke ended up squiring to him. But I think we kind of got a feel for some of the bigger picture, and we had some disagreements with the kind of establishment of the Crimson Company. And at some point just kind of saw bigger SCA, different SCA, and wanted to go do that, and it kind of came at odds with the household. So we I left, and then Rourke left, or Rourke left and then I left. I don't remember. It was it was a long time ago. But I started to become a better fighter and to win some tournaments and to travel a lot. And we went to Lily's to go there and see Richard. And then we went to, Kathan and I and Georg went to Pennsic a couple of times, and just kind of seeing the bigger thing. And it made me more interested in the bigger game and the different parts of it. I think we spent we spent several years going to a lot of events, but they were all pretty local, and we were all pretty focused on our little household. And so seeing the bigger picture was kind of what got me there. And then I had been fighting, well, by my account, for a period of a year or two, and winning tournaments and feeling good about myself, and wondering why I'm not getting knighted. And I actually squired to a gentleman, Sir Christoph Gately, who I had gone to college with, who's a number of years older than me. He was an older student, but we'd gone to college together. He had come into the SCA while, after I had been in for a number of years, and he just kind of got in with the right people, as it were, and the crew who were, a bunch of the knights who were of pretty high activity at the time. And he was a good fighter. He was a most amazing spear fighter I've ever encountered, but not much of a tourney fighter. But after a couple of years, he got knighted, and we were out at a Lily's War one year, and I had been kind of getting more into mainstream SCA and had been asked to be on Arton Aziz's Queen's Guard. And I was on the Queen's Guard, and we were out there, and he came up to me and he said, "Hey, I wanted to ask you if you'd be my squire, and I don't think that there's a lot that I can teach you about fighting, but I think that I can help you kind of navigate and learn some more of the other things that are going on in the game." And I thought about it for a good little while, because I had some pride there, I guess, and I decided that probably sounds reasonable. And we did not have like a super strong knight squire relationship, and we didn't go to a lot of events together. But he gave me some pointers, and I was squired to him a little less than a year, and then I decided that I wanted to fight in Crown Tournament, and I fought in Crown Tournament, and I won, and I gave my belt back at that point.
Yeah, I when I was looking at your OP entry, I noticed that you won Crown before you were knighted.
Yeah.
So when you decided that you wanted to fight Crown Tourney, did your training change?
No. I had been just fighting pretty hard, and I had been winning, a lot of the tournaments that I wanted to, that I went to fight in. I think I started slower, but we used to have a lot of events that we would have just a little tourney or whatever, and there were, I was just winning tournaments, and I thought, I want to do this. I had sat down at Estrella that year. So I had been 9 years in the SCA at this point, and sat down on the middle of the field. There used to be camping all around, and then the battlefield in the middle. And there'd be hay bales out in the middle of the battlefield because there were big parties some nights. And there wasn't a party this night. And I was sitting out there, and I was talking to Madigan, who would become my queen, and we were we had complaints about, how we'd make things different, and different cultural stuff. And I decided, I thought that I would try to fight in Crown and see if I could, do some, make some changes and shake things up and see what it was like, because it was always something that I had, since I joined the SCA, or maybe not since I joined the SCA, but partway through the SCA, I decided that I wanted to be king. I had always wanted to be a knight. I thought that would be really cool. but I thought I wanted to be king. And like when I was in college, I took a public speaking class thinking, well, if I'm going to be king someday, I should learn how to speak in public.
You're a
So,
planner.
I had that, in my mind as something that I wanted to do. And I fought in Crown and I won. I did not really change my training for it because at that point I was at a good point in my fighting, and had a pretty good confidence in where I was at and where other people were at, and it worked out and I won.
So in addition to fight practice, what other things were you doing at that time to train?
I hit the Pell. I used to hit the Pell. I used to, I would train on the Pell, and I would train with kind of slow targety work on the Pell. And I did that for a number of years, for sure. Try stuff out, work in that muscle memory. So yeah, there was a good amount of that. I mean, there was a point, Cathan came back from somewhere with some drill about, that you need 6,000 times of doing a thing to get your muscle memory for it. And so I'd go out there and I'd, do 100 accurate, each shot a day. And yeah. So I guess I was doing that at that point, but it's something that I'd been doing. It wasn't that I jumped on that to go fight in Crown. It was just part of my regular routine that I've been doing. And fighter practice, most of the time we would have big fighter practices every Sunday. When I was in college, I would also get some Saturday practices at the college there. And then there were also a couple of years in there when all of us young guys who were coming up had, there was also a Wednesday night practice at the College of UNM here in Albuquerque and Alberon. And so there were some times when I was getting 3 practices a week, but mostly one, but really a lot of quality fighters. I mean, back then Alberon was the big place for the central hub of the Outlands where the most of the crowns came from.
Yeah, so somebody had a comment that it used to be called Duke City, or was Duke City?
It still is called the. I mean, it mundanely is called the Duke City.
Oh, okay.
So that is that is a fitting thing. Yeah. And so I had, I'd been on Arton Aziz's retinue as a Queen's Guard. The big tournament then at that time for kind of that wasn't Crown tournament. It was the Lord of Outlandish, which I had won a couple of years before, but then the other big one at that time was Queen's Champion. And so after Arton stepped down, Bogan stepped up, I won Queen's Champion for Tora, his queen. And that was like a big deal. And that was another job. And so it was another thing where I got to really see the inner workings of it all. And I think that is the other part of it that really pushed me into wanting to fight in Crown was, taking that step, seeing all that, being, a bigger part of retinue, going to a stray war or standing court, seeing all the stuff that went on for that. Yeah.
So you won the first Crown you entered? Yes. Okay. That's pretty unique, I think. Do you have you ever had a tourney day ritual, or is there something you do to get your head in the right place?
I used to be a little more superstitious with things about trying to, I think that Crown tournament I was certainly nervous about, and I certainly got up and was out on the field. I think before anybody was out there, before anybody set up their pavilions and stuff. And I used to be one of those guys who would want to get on the field before my opponent. Nowadays, I'm much more casual about it, and it's not as much of a thing. But back then, I think that was part of my thing. But I never had, my joke was that I got up. I didn't sleep that well before the tournament because I had some nerves, and I got up and there was a continental breakfast at the hotel. Come on. And I ate a pink donut.
A pink donut? That's the secret.
That was what got me through Crown. So
somebody says that they're pretty sure you have a perfect record for crowns you've fought in. So have you only fought in 3?
I have only fought in 3 crowns.
Oh, that's pretty interesting. Okay. So, okay. Do you do other things to keep fit? You look like you're a pretty fit guy.
Nowadays, I do a lot of other things, a lot more than I do SCA things. I bicycle, I mountain bike, I ski, I hike. I have run in the past. Back then, I did not do a lot. I fought a lot. I've got a good metabolism, and it was my one of my mottos when I started getting better at fighting, and throughout all the years, whenever I'm talking to somebody who wants to get better, is be the first guy on the field and the last to leave at every fighter practice, and you can't help but learn stuff. But also you get worn out. You fight hard enough till you're exhausted, and then you stop and take a break, and then you fight till you're exhausted again. So that was kind of mostly what I did in that era.
Okay.
So I do a lot more now to keep in shape because I'm getting older.
Yeah. It's the curse. It's the curse. After you turn 40, it's a lot harder.
Yes, indeed.
I'm assuming you're over 40.
I am.
Okay. So did you and Madigan end up doing some stuff that first reign, like you talked about on the hay bales?
Yeah. One of the neatest things that I was able to, we were still a pretty new kingdom at that point. I guess 9 years old, but so one of the things we had gone to Lily's, we had, kind of been intrigued with Callantyr and their neat culture. They've got, Ontier is actually another place that has had over time a somewhat homogenous culture. Callantyr has somewhat homogenous culture in their Anglo-Saxon thing, and we thought that was pretty neat. And one of the things that we had been talking about that night was that it was, I'd been in the SCA for 9 years, and I'd gotten my AOA level fighting award, 4 years before that, and I wasn't a knight, and there was nothing else in between, and we didn't have grant level awards then, and so we got to make grant level awards in the Outlands, and that was really a neat experience to be able to actually enact some change like that. It was a neat group of people that we were able to give the first of those awards to, and it was really good. So
that's really cool. What's the origin of the names that you gave them, or is there a story behind that?
I don't know if there's a story behind them. They are the Thane of the Iron Heart, which is the fighting award, and it's HART, which a deer, stag.
Okay, that makes sense.
And the flower, it was originally the desert flower for arts, but it's now just the flower because the heralds didn't like desert flower. And the stag is the service award. So I got to obviously the Callantyr has their great Beardman Huskarl, thing. So it was a little homage to that, and we took it in a little different direction with the Thane part of it, but it tried to get it fitting for our kingdom. And then the only other, I guess, neat touch that I was able to impart to it is that all of our AOA level awards have our kingdom embattled arms around the outside, and my arms are an engrailed gold border, and so we put an engrailed border on all the
cool.
grant awards. So that's my little stamp there that I get to keep on that. But that was really special, and it is really kind of cool and humbling to see that people are still kind of, the Thane thing in particular. It was modeled after the Huskarl Charter in that it was excellent in all weapons forms, or exceptional in all weapons forms and excellent in 3. So it was not just you're a good fighter, but you got to be able to bring it with multiple weapons forms. And people still get really excited about it, and it's a neat award.
Well, it sounds like I've talked to a couple of Dukes from the Outlands now, and it sounds like it's not uncommon for an unbelt to win out there. So when you won as an unbelt, was that a big deal or?
No, it wasn't a big deal. I had been to some other kingdoms with different cultures. I remember we went to a Kaid West War. They used to call it Treasure Chest War one year, and Stefan of Bellatrix had just won crown in the West, and they knighted him because they didn't want to have an unbelted king. And I was like, wow, that's so different from our thing, because we had Johann and Sirith before me. Yeah, not uncommon.
Okay. Was it interesting for you as an unbelted king to sit in some of these peerage circles and kind of see the behind the scenes?
No, I loved it. I ate it up.
You ate it up. Okay.
I thought it was great. Yeah.
Cool. And then
see how the inner workings of things go. And get some different perspective, and I was able to offer a little bit different perspective, I think, coming into it. So yeah, because I certainly had been one of those people, and there's lots of them who you are out there and you're doing your thing and you're fighting well, and you look over and you see this guy getting knighted and you're like, hey, why is that guy getting knighted? And kind of getting the understanding of really what all else was involved was just great. I really relished it. So,
yeah. When you stepped down from your first reign, were you offered knighthood right away, or?
I was offered knighthood. I stepped down in November. I was offered knighthood at Estrella War, and okay. I believe that's because I had said that I always wanted to be knighted at Estrella War. It's my understanding after the fact that before I stepped up at my coronation, there was some talk about whether they should knight me or not, and then decided that well, let's see what he does. So I was knighted at Estrella War 3 months after I stepped in.
Okay, and was that a surprise at Estrella?
No,
not
a surprise at all. I kind of had inklings, I guess, because I kind of felt that I was kind of there. But the real reason that it wasn't a surprise was because we were out in the field battle an hour before it happened or something, and I saw the White Stag Herald walking with a sword and a scroll case, I think, across the middle of the broken field, and I thought, I think,
I wonder what's happening.
Yeah. And then I had a interesting situation there, because it was a field knighting, but they didn't get to finish the knighting on the field. So I was actually knighted twice. I was dubbed on the field, but I didn't get a buffet, and then Leon was called, and so we all threw our helmets on and went out and fought. And it was pretty cool, because it was that was one of the other really neat things about being crowned. That first time was being involved in writing the treaty for Estrella War that next year, because even though I wasn't the crown during it, the negotiations were in October or whatever, and I got to go be involved in that, and I was involved in lots of them since then, and that's always really interesting to me. So it was a cool battle that we had designed. It was this ransom battle where we had 5 guys on each team that had a coin, and you had to try to capture them and ransom them. And it was a bunch of my buddies. It was all the first thanes who had the coins.
Oh, cool.
So that was really neat. But they called Leon in the middle of it, and so then the next day we had a court ceremony before the battles. And I was
So at the time, did you think, hey, I didn't get a buffet?
yeah.
Okay. All right. Did you know that they were going to finish it the next day?
I think that we said something about
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Okay.
Arton said something about it. But yeah, and actually I sat vigil that night.
Okay.
Yeah, so I knew it was yes,
So
gonna
you
happen.
were sort of you were given your belt and everything, and then you sat vigil, and then they buffeted you. And
Yeah. No, they did the whole thing. They did the whole.
oh, they
Thing.
did the whole thing again.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. That's really cool. So you got both a field knighting and a court knighting.
Yeah.
That's
Exactly.
pretty awesome, actually. All right. So you won your next crown pretty shortly after that, right?
It was 3 years later.
3 years later.
I kind of purposely did that. I don't. I'm to this day not a fan of revolving door reigns, and I think that you can wear people out if you do it too much. So we waited a couple of years and then decided, that we wanted to try again.
And did you reign with Madigan again?
Yeah, yeah. That was in '98, and it was another summer reign. And we traveled. I think both those reigns we really traveled a lot. We went all over the kingdom, and although I had traveled out of kingdom some before that, I had not traveled to all the corners of our kingdom. We have a long, skinny kingdom, and we
Yes.
group up in Scottsbluff, Nebraska, that we went. Our first reign we went to twice, and that's like a 14-hour drive.
Wow.
Little group that we got to make a shire down in a little group. In Hobbs, New Mexico, in the very southeast corner of the state, and that was neat. So getting to know everything about the kingdom and all the people all over was really great. And then we still kept going to Lily's and going to. We didn't go to Pensacola second reign. We went to Pensacola first reign. Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about your perfect crown record, because I think I think the only other person I know that's done that is Tamiki. And I think to do that, you must have really great mental focus. And I kind of want to talk about your mental focus a little bit and how you put yourself in the right frame of mind for a tourney, if you could tell us.
Sure, I'll do my best. I mean, I'm trying to think back to my first crown is a little difficult, but I think the thing that certainly in the last crown that I won, the thing that really, when I tried to analyze a little bit about it, is being very clear as to my capabilities, being very clear and open to the fact that I can win this, but also that that I may not, and that it's always anyone's day, and being at comfort with the possibility of losing also, as going into it, I think helps me be a little more grounded in it, because
you don't overpressure yourself.
yeah, and it lets it be okay, when you take a loss, and I'll hop up and I'll try again.
Yeah, because one of the really important things that I've learned through this is being able to relax through the day, like finding out what allows you to relax. And it sounds like you do that by giving yourself permission not to win. I mean, you want to win, but it's okay if you don't.
Yeah, and I have definitely felt very strongly that I would like to win. One of the reasons that I haven't fought in a lot of crown tournaments is that I only do it when I really feel like I want to win. So yeah, and having the knowledge of your own strengths and weaknesses, I think, is really helpful there too.
Do you
I
Do you,
got really stressed out the first two, not really stressed out. I got really worn out. They were long days, the
the
first,
tournament days?
the tournament days, because my focus was very much trying to see, watching the list, trying to see who my next fight was going to be, seeing how everybody else was fighting, um, paying that close attention. And when they're, uh, I mean, they weren't giant tourneys, but they're, 2 out of 3 fight double limb tournaments where there's a lot of breaks between to right up the next round and all that. It was kind of mentally exhausting by the end of it for sure. Um, just to keep that level of focus. I did not have that nearly as much the last one. And that was, I think, just because I'm more comfortable in my skin fighting after doing it for so long.
Yeah. And do you still fight well, not obviously not right now, but when there were fight practices and events, are you still fighting all the time?
I am not. I have probably, I really cut back my SCA around 2009. I had a lot of changes in my life. I got a divorce. I changed jobs. I had a lot of things going on. And I kind of took a step aside from the SCA for a couple of years and didn't do much of it at all. And interestingly enough, it was also, I had stopped a little bit at that time, kind of leading up to that. I wasn't having as much fun fighting as I had. I was maybe just get, even if I had a really good day, I'd come away from it just feeling kind of drained. And I think it was in part because I just played a lot. We played a lot. We were at events or fighter practice almost every weekend, all the time for 15 years or whatever. And then in that time, I had a bunch of time in the marshalate, and I was the Earl Marshal of the Outlands, and then I was Society Marshal for a couple of years.
Oh wow.
And so I think all that time of just go had worn me out a bit, and so I took a break for a number of years, and then I started coming back fighting more in 2013 or so, and I got together with Ingrid and started fighting more and started feeling like, hey, maybe I could do this again, and thought, hey, maybe I could fight in Crown again. In 2014, I fought in Crown again, and that was that one.
Yeah. I noticed you're also a Pelican. Is that for your marshalate stuff? Is that the main service you did? Yeah.
I was Earl Marshal of the Outlands for a couple of years, and then I was really heavily involved with Australia War and marshaling at Australia War and helping set up the treaties for Australia War. I was an advisor a lot of years. So I did a lot then, and then I got my Pelican in around 2003 or something, and then after that I was dropped dead for the Society Earl Marshal for 3 years, and then I was Society Earl Marshal for 3 years. So
that's how yeah, how much work is it to do a society level job like that? Like how many hours a week?
I
A lot.
probably 20 hours a week or 15 hours a week or something like that. It was a lot, and it was a lot of herding cats and trying to get people to do stuff that they're not doing, and it's not
the unfun stuff.
It's a little bit of a thankless job.
Yeah. So we have a couple fun questions for you from people watching. The first one, I don't know, it's from Merrick, and I never know if it's an inside joke or what, but he says, who makes better gin, you or Ryan Reynolds? Is that a joke? Or?
Makes his gin. So I'm not a fan of Aviator. So
okay.
Yeah.
And then somebody else wants to know, what's the 3 most epic fights you've ever had?
Oh my gosh. 3 most epic fights I've ever had. I had a really epic fight in my second crown tournament against now Duke Maelgwyn. He hadn't won crown yet then, but they did this tournament very different from most Outlands Crowns tournaments are single fight, double limb, 2 out of 3, and they're random draw. And this crown tournament was a round robin, 2 out of 3. And it was this beautiful sunny day down in Socorro, which is where I went to college, and so it was like hometown, home field advantage there. And I had been fighting well most of the day, and we drew each other. And Maelgwyn is a very, very fast lefty, and we got called up on the field, and it had been this beautiful sunny day, and it got cloudy, and it started to rain, and there was like wind blowing so hard that our shields were blowing around, and there was lightning and thunder, and it was a really, really long fight. And I think he legged me and beat me the first fight, and then and it went on, and then he legged me, and I beat him the second fight from my knees, and then I was like, yeah, I'm back on, I'm on fire, and I was able to get him in the third fight, and that was like definitely one of the epic ones that I remember, just because it was so dramatic with the way the weather changed as well during that fight. And it was a round robin, so there wasn't even a final because it was not set up that great. So it was just, I've got more wins than everybody I won.
Really?
And that was kind of in the middle of the tournament. Yeah, because by the time, it was a little strange. So you didn't quite know when, but that was like the final of the fights for sure, because it was the big one for that day. And then another one that I really remember was the first time that I ever like had a good fight where I beat Duke Johann. We used to have a war with Atenvelt that switched back and forth between being Flagstaff, and this year it was in Continental Divide, New Mexico. And Rourke got bit by a black widow at that event. We had to take him to the hospital, and that was like a really big deal. And he was all right, thankfully. But after that, I was back, and there were a bunch of melees going on, and I just went and I was like thinking that I was, really badass, and I was like, I want to do a pickup fight, and I picked a pickup fight with Johann, and I think he mostly beat me up, but I remember I got him once, at least, and it felt really good. And it was I gave him a good long fight, and we were both pretty tired afterwards, and that felt really good. So that's pretty epic. I don't know about trying to think of a third. I have a lot of really fun fights. I don't know about some of that.
I think that you can recall too, that much detail is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So did your third reign feel any different? You fought for someone else, you reigned with someone else, you're older, you had taken a break.
Yeah, it felt very different. It was fun. It felt like there was some enthusiasm about it. I think there were some people who were excited because I had been around for a long time and was king a long time ago, and I did it again, and that's neat. It was really neat we had, I don't know if you know, but the contingent that came out from Montier for Ingrid to our coronation was just, it was beautiful. It was wonderful. It was really neat and touching, and neat to have a little bit of cultural exchange, because that's one of the things that is so great and so neat about the SCA, for sure, is all the different cultures and the excitement of seeing new people there. So that was really neat. We had a couple of really hard things happen during the reign. There were deaths of a couple pretty big key big people, big personalities that had been a big part of the Outlands, and that was hard to deal with, but it was good, I think, to I don't know. I felt uh, it was people who I was close with, so it made it feel. I guess I was happy that if it was somebody who knew them and could try to do what they could to honor them.
Could honor them.
Yeah, yeah. And it was a lot of fun. It was different because it was a winter reign, and my first two reigns had been summer reigns. So we got to do a stray war, and that was really exciting as a king because I had never had a chance to do that. So yeah, and it had been long enough that it was a little new and different. There were new people to meet again in the kingdom, travel around and reconnect. So
yeah. It seems like about every 5 years you get sort of an influx of new people in the SCA, and they forget the people that reigned 15 years ago, 10 years ago, and so it's all new again, and it's kind of cool actually.
Yeah,
sure. Yeah. And the whole exchange with Antir, I thought it was so cool, the way Kalja got everybody together to make your step up clothes. I mean, that was so fun to have this group project, and then to see you guys step up, and you guys looked amazing. Was really, really cool. Somebody else wants to know what's your favorite event to travel to. I'm going to ask you what your favorite event is, but what's your favorite event to travel to?
And shut the door because the dogs are getting a little wild back there. My favorite event to travel to, I would say, is Antir West War. I've been to one of those, and it was fantastic. It was the second best site that I've ever been to. Beautiful, fun event. Beautiful site, great people, a lot of fun fighting. So
yeah, the weather is amazing. It's right by the beach.
Yeah,
that's when you went, right? It's the one on the
yeah. Yeah, that was in a couple of years ago, 4 or 5 years.
And it's a nice, relaxed little war.
Yeah, yeah. It had a really good feel to it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you would like to talk about?
I don't think so.
Okay. Did you bring your sword?
I did.
All right. Let's look at your sword.
It's short.
It is short.
I'm
a little surprised because you're so tall.
I used to fight with a longer sword. I think I used to fight with about a 36-inch sword. I have had a wrist injury that happened just before the last crown that I won. That is not really fixable. And so I kind of have a degenerative wrist condition that is going to be with me and getting worse as things go on. And I am, for the first couple of years after I had the surgery for it, I had a really hard, I didn't know if I was going to be fighting again, honestly, because it just didn't work the same at all. And so I had to change up my fighting a little bit. And I changed up my fighting the last crown tournament that I won. It had happened just before then, and I ended up fighting a lot different than I usually did, and I did a lot more thrusting than I usually do, and it was effective for me that day. But it has definitely changed the way I fight, and so nowadays, if I over rotate, if I miss a shot, whiff a shot, for the first couple of years after I had that surgery, that was like the scariest thing and the most painful thing to have that over rotate. So I started fighting with a shorter sword and getting in a little bit closer. And I like that. And so this sword is about 33 inches.
Okay.
I have a thrusting tip. When I learned to fight, I did not use a thrusting tip for many, many years. And I believe that it teaches you much better swordsmanship. When I started, was still the doofy 2-inch, fat thrusting tips right. Too. So the advent of low profile really made a big difference. And I started fighting with one in part because we have a lot of Madu fighters in the Outlands and or the goofy upside, Loki used to fight with a goofy upside down sword. And a thrusting tip is a very effective weapon against those styles. So I kind of switched to that. I'm glad that we have those styles here. I know a lot of people are down on Madus and the kingdoms that don't allow them, and I think that all that does is train bad habits. When you disallow something, you train bad habits. There was a while when I was young that I went out to Kaid, and they were like, well, we did, I hit a guy in the arm. And they're like, well, we don't snipe arms here, and I'm like, well, but then you fight like this, and it's dumb. So don't teach yourself bad habits. I don't fight with a Madu, but I'm a much better fighter for knowing how to fight one. But anyway, back to my sword. So I have a thrusting tip. I use a plastic basket. I used to use a metal basket. I used to use a longer sword and I used to use the heavier hilt and the longer sword to get a lot of real kind of swoopy motion. My first crown and a couple of years before that and a couple of years after that, I did not have a lot of good power generation, and people would tell me I hit light a lot. And since I have gotten I think just better mechanics over time, and so now I can hit as hard as I need to. I don't have a problem with that at all, even with a shorter sword. So I use the plastic hilts now. I have a 2-finger trigger. I used to fight with a 3-finger trigger. I fight with a 2-finger trigger now.
And what do you have? Is it just black tape on your handle?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Stopped using hose clamps because I would break them. Except, I guess for a while I was if you put a good amount of tape under the hose clamp and then cinch it down, it doesn't do it as much. But mostly lately I just tape it. So, yeah. And I fight with a center grip heater shield nowadays. My first 2 crowns, I fought with a strapped heater, a bigger shield, and then I broke my shield one day at practice and borrowed a shield from a friend of mine, Sir Lavin, and he had this center grip heater, and it was just so much better. It was so much more aggressive, and the style was just great, and I took to it pretty quickly, and I enjoyed it, and I fight with that to this day. Yeah.
Happy accident.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Somebody wants to know, they say you have had the same kit for a while. Any thoughts about what might be next? Are you happy with your kit?
I'm mostly happy with my kit. I don't know. I have one other helmet that I'll wait till the helmet question for.
Okay.
I'm thinking about. Yeah, I've had the same thing for a while, and I like it. I've got kind of 2 different breastplates that I wear. One is kind of these steel plates, and another is the plastic lamellar. It's the old plastic lamellar, but it looks good from 10 feet. It just breaks too much, unfortunately. So I do like the anodized aluminum gold colored lamellar.
That I wear, yeah.
That's a nice look. That would be the other body armor that I would do, just because it's more durable than the plastic stuff.
Yeah, and it looks right. It's just very light.
I've mostly been wearing the steel plates lately, and I like, I used to fight in a really light stayed coat of just leather that was, I look at it now and you can go like this with the leather, and it's floppy and just almost no protection. And I liked it because it was light and I can move real fast. There's something, even if you're not getting hit a lot, that just feels good about having some weight of some armor on you. So I do kind of like that about the coat that I wear these days.
Yeah. Okay. I talked to Johan last night, so he sort of told me about the whole Duke color thing, but is there a reason you're the Golden Duke?
I have it's
golden hair. I don't know.
Yeah. I used to have really long blonde hair.
Okay.
I've got gold on my device. So yeah,
All right.
that's it.
Okay. All right. So let's do the final list of questions. If you could fight anyone in the world, who would it be?
I like new people who I haven't fought. That I would like to is Duke Sven, actually, from Anstiora. We've crossed paths a number of times and kind of become acquaintances, at least. He seems like a very good guy. He came out to Battlemore several years ago when I met him there, and we chatted since at Estrella and stuff, and we've just never crossed swords. And I had a really good time fighting Leaf here, who had that similar style. So he'd be a fun person to fight. But
yeah, he's a super fun fight.
Yeah, kind of new different stuff to change it up is really that's the good stuff. So
yeah, it keeps you challenged and it keeps it fresh and interesting.
Yeah.
Who would you like to see reign in your kingdom?
I would like to. There's one person who I would like to see reign, and I don't really even think I would agree with all the stuff he does very much at all, because he has a very different perspective. But I've known him forever. He's a really good fighter, Sir Alexander. I would like to see him. But the person that I really would like to see win crown is Sir Lavin, and he is just a fantastic man. He's been around forever. He was knighted when he was 19 or something, and has the skill to do it, and has an aversion to crown tournament. And we were talking. We were going to a Australia war practice this January, driving down to Socorro for it, and Arton and I were talking to him about it, trying to harass him into fighting in crown, because he'd be great. He's someone I'd like to see do it for sure.
Cool. If you could talk about fighting with anyone in the world for an hour, who would it be?
This is terrible, but I don't know if I'd want to talk to anybody for an hour about fighting right now.
Okay.
I've talked a lot of fighting in my time, and I like talking fighting with Sean. I like talking fighting with Ailenon. They both are very insightful and interesting fighters, and great fights. So
yeah, Ailenon is just so passionate that it's infectious, right?
I want to know. I watched his talk with you, and I want to know where he gets that level of enthusiasm, because after all these years, I find myself fighting sometimes to try to get enthusiasm. And so to you, thank you for doing this, because actually it's been really neat as I've watched a couple of these to prepare for this. It's a little bit inspiring, and I definitely have. If there's one vice that I suffer, it's a little bit of acedia. I have a little apathy going on sometimes. So it's been really nice to see that. But yeah, Ailenon, where do you get that stuff?
I don't know, but man, it's infectious. You watch his interview and you're just like, let's do it all, yeah. Right? Yeah. What's your favorite medieval-esque or period movie?
Definitely Excalibur. I saw that when I was probably too young. I think I saw it when it came out in the theater in 1981 or whatever. One of my mom's friends knew that I was into medieval stuff and took me, and I think he was probably halfway through the movie going like, oh my God, what did I do? What did I bring this kid to? But it really stuck with me all those years. And then I watched it recently because Ingrid had never seen it. And
what?
Yeah, exactly. And I was thinking, I was like, I wonder if this is going to be one of those movies that I go back and I watch and I'm like, oh my God, this is so bad. But it wasn't. It was great. Yeah, still, and it was really fun. Recognizing all the recognizable people that I had no idea of years ago.
That is like a packed cast.
Yeah. And I love the contrast that they do between the grubby, dark iron, armor, and then boom, they get this shiny, beautiful, thing.
Yeah, they like gleam, right?
Yeah, it was really, really well done. So,
that's cool. If you could add or subtract a rule from the rules of the list, what would it be?
haha, I had my chance. And
You did.
I did. And I made many of the changes that I would have changed. And it made some people unhappy, but I think that we are more cohesive because of it. The things that I would change now that I wasn't able to get buy-in on are I think that I really don't like kingdoms with the convention of not taking thrust to the side of the top of the head. I think it's inaccurate. It's
Dumb.
the reason, and the people, face thrusts weren't legal east of the Mississippi for years because they thought it was dangerous, but we have been doing it forever. And then they say, oh, it's dangerous to, stab somebody in the side of the head. Well, you're stabbing people in the side of the head, and they're just saying, no, that's not good. So that's the big one that I would change. I wish we had more of a society-wide buy-in on the killing from behind, also, because I think it's just a lot less dangerous, and it gives a little more advantage to when you can get around behind an enemy line. So I think that makes the battles a little more realistic. So those are the two things that I had a lot of arguments with people about, and I tried to convince them, but wouldn't buy it.
Yeah. All right. What is your favorite tournament format?
2 out of 3 double limb random draw like we do here. It can make for a long day if it's a big tournament, but there's something about sitting through that long day that adds to the experience of it. I like 2 out of 3 because it does give you the chance to make a mistake and come back from it. And I like double limb just because you get to play longer.
What's your favorite event?
My favorite event is an event that we used to have here in the Outlands called Lonely Mountain. And it's the first site that I ever went to an event at, even though it wasn't the same event then. But this is an event that ran for many years, from my formative days in the SCA through like 2010 or 2011. It is outside of Los Alamos, New Mexico, up in a ponderosa forest with a big meadow at 9,000 feet. And it's the most beautiful site that I've ever been to. It was the most wonderful event, and it went through a lot of iterations from, being a pretty big thing where for a couple of years we even had some kind of minor, war melee events where we had a couple of barons from different baronies coming and having armies of 30, 40 people on a side, to just the most relaxing event where you just sit around by the meadow all day and, people play Hunkerhausen and maybe fight a little bit. But it was the best site ever. Most fun event. We had some amazing times at it. When I had a birthday one year that was at that event, and we held a Roman games there, and we had chariot races and spear throwing, and we made up a ball game after a Roman game called Harpastum that we played both in and out of armor. We cooked good food. I used to brew beer a lot, and I would brew beer and cask it in oak casks and bring them up to the event and tap them up there. And it was such a fantastic event, such a beautiful site. And then I think 2010 or 2011, there was a big fire up there that did not totally destroy the site, but it came very near it, and the fire department, or the fire crews crewed out of that area and really trampled it down and had to cut lots of it back. And they haven't had it since then, obviously, but a couple of years ago, Sir Bohemian and I held a not really event, but a gathering up there. There was a nightly vigil where we brought a bunch of knights and some squires and sat around from dusk till dawn and talked chivalry and that sort of thing. which was really great. And so we got to kind of see the site again. And then last year, some folks from the Shire up there had a knot event, and I stopped by during the day, and there was a small handful of people up there, and they're kind of sussing it out and seeing if we can do it again. And the Forest Service has changed some rules, so we can't park on the road, which is where we used to go. And it was such a popular event that I think if we held it again, the problem would be that so many people would come that you'd have a hard time parking and controlling all of that stuff. So it's kind of a logistic nightmare to try to get going again, but hopefully they'll make it happen again, because it's just such a neat place.
It's called Lonely Mountain.
Lonely Mountain, yeah.
Lonely Mountain. All right, cool. That sounds very, very. It sounds kind of like Ontario Westward, relaxed and nice.
Yeah, and that's the Ontario West. When I went there, I was like, wow, this is the second most beautiful site I've ever been to, and it is kind of a similar thing. Obviously, Lonely Mountain never got that big. I think there may be 400 people there at some point at its peak. But yeah, it's not the same thing, but just a great, relaxing, beautiful sort of walk.
Cool. If you could have any helmet, regardless of cost, what kind would it be?
Aha. So I was really fortunate. The helmet that I have, that I've had the same kit for a long time. My last two helmets, I have been very fortunate. When I was king the first time, my king's champion was Sir Richard of Wolfwood. He was Rourke's knight. He had lived out here for a while. I'd become friends with him. He's kind of a mentor to me, and a guy I look up to a lot to this day. And for the last two helmets, have been able to go out to his shop and have him help me make a helmet. So I actually got to do a lot of the hard work on it, a lot of the menial work on it, and he did the precise work on it. And so the helmet that I have now is the Nesdovo helmet, and we were able to make a really nice rendition of it, with, part of what I love about his work is that he's got that Dark Ages aesthetic.
Really does.
Not super shiny. It's a little rough, and I like that about it. And so I was able to go out there and make the helmet that I have now, and that was, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. It was a while ago. And so I have been thinking a little bit lately, wow, I could use a new helmet. What would I do? And so the only other helmet that I would like is the Yaroslav helm. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's a Russian, got a high point. It has a big plaque.
Is that the one with the angel on it?
Yes.
Yes,
exactly.
I do know. I just didn't notice.
So the Yaroslav helm is the only other helmet that I would like, and it's really great. And I don't know if you have seen, but there was I think in 2009 or something, a Russian remake of Alexander Nevsky, and they did that helmet in it, but they did a neat thing with, they had kind of a Kipchak face on it. There was this menacing face. So I think the helmet that I would like most would be that helmet with a removable, swappable grill or kind of menacing face. And
that would be cool.
If I get Richard to help me with it, that would be my dream.
Yeah, so. He sure has a distinctive style. His stuff is really beautiful.
Yeah, it is. So amazing.
Okay, it's Saturday morning at Estrella, and several people want to talk to you about last night. What did you do?
There were a lot of good Estrella stories, and
I heard the turkey one last night.
I was there for the turkey, and that was quite an amusing. Yeah, like that night, the entire night. It started out with us. Sir Craigon, who's an amazing man, got a little in his cups, and his squire kept trying to put him to bed, and he kept sneaking out the back of the tent and running around and we'd have to go grab him again. And then the turkey thing happened, and then there were a number of years where I'd be the guy who would get woken up in the morning, and people would come because they had stolen the golf cart in the middle of the night and broken one of the leaf springs, and what are we gonna do about that? Or there was a chair throwing incident, and what are we gonna do about that? And thankfully, those days aren't quite like that so much anymore. Nothing exciting nowadays. The the last time somebody would have said something, it would have been Gabe, who was so excited the morning after because I had been drinking at the Wobbly H and polished off a couple of bottles of Jägermeister, and they were just so excited that I got plowed. That was the year of the rain, and I went staggered back to my tent, fell in it, and it had been raining for 2 days, and it kept raining the entire next day, and I woke up 4 or 5 times the next day and looked out of my tent, and it was still raining, and I was like, I'm going back to bed. That's it. But they were very excited when they saw me the next day. So that's
Cool.
the best recent stray story. Otherwise, it's just going to bed early.
Who is your favorite fight ever?
I really like good hard fights. I really like fun fights. I've had some amazingly fun fights with Duke Martino, and I always end up smiling. We'll be going at each other really hard, and we end up smiling. Bela is the same way with me. I love fighting Duke Guy because you got to bring it, and it's like getting hit with a sledgehammer every time he swings that sword at your shield. And probably my favorite might be Sir Richard, because like fighting him with a spear or with a sax knife, 6-foot spear or sax knife, that spear's my other thing, and I do a lot of it. But we know each other well enough, and there is all the ferocity, and you got to bring it, otherwise you're going to get totally knocked on your ass. And yet there's just such a joy in it that it's a beautiful thing, and like I love his fighting spirit as well. So yeah, that's probably them.
Yeah, those are the kinds of fights that keep bringing you back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, and then the last question is, who's the cleanest fighter in your kingdom?
I might say Sir Alexander, who I mentioned earlier.
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever met him. His name used to be Akira. He was a Madu fighter. He now mostly fights sword and shield. He is one of the most technical fighters that I know, and super soft spoken. Doesn't travel a ton, but is super clean and just super good fight. So Alexander.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for talking to me. I know you don't really do Facebook, and I really appreciate you sharing all this with me. You're such a thoughtful person. It's been very interesting for me, and I hope someday we get to meet in person. That would
me
be
too,
awesome.
for sure. And thank you for having me. This has been really, it was it took me a little bit to open up to the idea, and I kind of like, well, I haven't been playing a lot. I don't know how.
I get it. I get it.
But it's been really great to watch some of these. As I said earlier, it's pretty inspiring, and I could use some inspiration. So that's really nice. So thank you for doing this. They're great.
And thanks everyone for joining us. Tomorrow I'm talking to Duke Craven, which should also be interesting. Yeah, fun one. So thanks again.
He might be a good third epic fight. I had a really fun epic. It was just a buy fight in the Outlands prize tournament that I just jumped in. They were doing the bear pit parts of it. I jumped in and fought him, and we fought forever and ever. And he is so hard to hit. And I ended up like turning around so far that I did a spin and hit him finally. But it went on forever, and he has such that tight defense with that sombrero. And
yeah. Well, right, like he has his shield over his head, and it's like how can you not hit him? But yeah. Anyway, all right. Well, thanks again.
Good. Nice to meet you. Bye. Thanks.